Hey friends, this is Amy Price Bromberg here, and I want to welcome you to the next episode of Priceless Backstories podcast. I have a friend with me
Yeah.
today who is joining us. Her name is Liv Lessmann, and Liv and I, we go back to, Liv was actually a softball player at the University of Dayton, here in Dayton, Ohio, and she was a pitcher on the team. And I had the opportunity to mentor you, right? To mentor Liv,
Mhm.
and just to get to see her grow a ton as a woman in her faith, as well as see her impact her teammates in her time involved with Athletes in Action at UD. Liv she's one of the sharpest leaders that I know I've worked with here at University of Dayton, and she's one of the sweetest girls. I know the girls that know her, who have been mentored by her friends would say everybody loves Liv. And so she is also just finished up some time being involved with the Auburn softball team this year in the SEC, and is going for her master's degree in the clinical mental health counseling master's program. Welcome to the show, Liv.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so excited to be here, so excited to see you again. It's been forever. But yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. I think of like what would you say is like the places we spent the most time at in your time here in Dayton?
Oh,
Give me some hot spots.
if it hot spots. Did we ever meet at Tastefully Roasted?
Uh
Maybe a couple times.
yeah.
Big B's for sure.
Yes. The coffee shops
Um,
off Brown Street.
mhm. All the coffee shops on Brown Street. Um, Big coffee drinker, so that was always my go-to. um, I think, well, I mean, if it wasn't at my apartment, my house, wherever I was living at the time, um, yeah, I'm trying to think where else we've met other than coffee shops.
I would say, yeah, I'd say you're totally right. Most of the time it was at Tastefully Roasted Coffee Shop for sure.
Mhm.
A break on campus. And then I know we spent some time in your apartment when you started leading your discipleship group with Megan and Lily. Right.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, at Caldwell. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Caldwell.
My yeah, it was my junior year, I
Yeah.
think. If I remember right. I feel like it's all a blur at this
So
point.
long ago, isn't it?
It feels like it, but also it feels like it was just yesterday too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Um,
Mhm.
well, Liv, today we're going to get to talk about your experience at Dayton as a college softball player, as well as your time at Auburn, some of the things that really matter to you. I know mental health is a topic that is something that you think about a lot, and that you're even pursuing a degree, right? In that area.
Mhm.
And so we're going to talk about those things as well as how you've incorporated your faith um, in the midst of your time in college. And so I'm excited. I think we have listeners who even talking on the phone with your coach today. She said, wait to hear this podcast. So I know there's fans and friends of yours out there that are looking forward to hearing um, this podcast today.
Yeah.
So let's bring us in here. Tell us more. So you grew up in Missouri, correct?
More or less. I always say it's complicated just because I've kind of been a little bit of everywhere in the
Okay.
past couple of years throughout my life. I claim St. Louis is home,
Yeah.
even still to this day. I actually was born and raised in northwestern Iowa,
Okay.
um, and then moved to St. Louis when I was going into fifth grade. And so my core memories were in St. Louis, like graduated high school, all my friends are still in St. Louis, went to college and would come back, to visit my family in St. Louis. And then my junior year of college at Dayton, my family moved to Enterprise, Alabama. So huge move. And so they're still down here. And that's kind of, in a way, how I ended up at Auburn. And we'll connect those dots later because it's all very intricate of how it all happened. But yeah, but I do claim St. Louis is home still, and
Okay.
we'll go back whenever I can. But yeah.
Yeah. So growing up in St. Louis, like what was it about University of Dayton that really pulled you or that I heard an interview from you when you were like a freshman where you said that Dayton felt like home, like when you came to visit. And so, yeah, can you tell us more about why would a girl from growing up in Iowa, St. Louis is kind of home for you, that area? Why would you choose University of Dayton? What was it that drew you to that school?
Yeah, actually, it's very much a God thing, and I still can't quite explain it. I can explain the feeling, I guess. So, from probably from the time I was in 8th grade until I actually committed to Dayton, I had gone to so many different softball camps at so many different campuses around the US, just kind of everywhere, trying to find that fit and trying to see, where I could really envision myself being. And again, I had been to so many places, like I can't even remember all of the places that I'd been, and I actually really liked. And after I think my visit before Dayton, which I wasn't even on my radar. I did not know Dayton was a thing. Like I'd never heard of Dayton, especially kind of being mostly from the other side of the Midwest, away from Ohio a little bit. It wasn't really in my radar because I was looking at schools that were like within like 5 hours of St. Louis, and Dayton was just a little bit of over an hour past that radius, so it was never on my radar. And coach had shown interest at a tournament and asked me to come on a visit. But before that visit, I was talking with my dad, and I'm like, Dad, how am I supposed to figure out where I'm supposed to go and like where I'm supposed to be? Because I've been to so many campuses and camps, and they're all great and I like them, but I'm like, how am I supposed to make this decision when there's just so many choices, and how do I know what's going to be right? And he said, I don't know how to explain it, but you'll know when you know. And I'm like, okay, well, that's helpful. And so I go on the visit at Dayton, to the camp the first time around. And again, can't even explain it. I just had this feeling, and I just believe it was just the Holy Spirit telling me, like, this is home. This is where you're supposed to be. And again, like before I had even gone to the camp, all I had did was just drive through Dayton and like, going through Brown Street, and I'm like, this is so weird, but I just feel like that this is home. And again, can't even put words to it and like really why I decided on Dayton, because that was really the real reason. And I just feel like that was just what God was telling me to do and where he was leading me all along. And yeah, so it's really hard to explain, but that is why essentially I chose Dayton. It was just a feeling and it felt like home. And again, I just feel like it was the Holy Spirit telling me, yeah, this is where you need to be.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's cool. It is one of those things, right? When
Hmm.
we ask, and it's like you were saying, I can't even describe it, but it makes me think of like there's just a peace that you have about it, right? This like
Absolutely.
that was I couldn't imagine going anywhere else. Like there was this
Yeah.
peace about it, and so that's really cool. You know that it felt like home, and so the experience at Dayton was just roses, wasn't it? Your 4 years here. I mean, the rest of the way you're living on top of the mountaintop, right, in the Midwest.
Well, it I would say it came with its ups and downs. I feel like with most college athletes, it's never going to be what exactly you envision or what you expect. Um, but also it ending up being in a good way. I think at the time I'm like, this is not turning out the way I wanted it to. But at the same time, at the end of the day, looking back, I knew that that's exactly how everything was supposed to go. And I don't have any regrets whatsoever, because I just knew that like in order for me to grow and in order for God to propel me forward into kind of like that next stage of my life that he had planned for me, I had to go through some of the things that I went through. And I would not be here today just finishing up working with Auburn softball if I did not go through any of that. And I firmly believe that. And it was so God piecing everything together. But in the moment, it's like, what is happening? And so I can get into that a little bit more too. But
Yeah, tell us more. I actually want to take us back one step, and then we'll get into
yeah.
what is happening. Like, what are just some of the best moments you had? Maybe it's specific to softball, but when you think back, like specifically in your time as an undergrad at
Mhm.
UC, what are some of your favorite moments with the girls?
Ugh, I feel like there's so many. I mean, just being with the girls, I swear 24/7 was just a blast. From freshman to senior year, like I had a great group of girls, some really great teammates, and um, I mean, just getting to hang out with them, travel with them. Definitely my senior year was very memorable. I mean, COVID was kind of part of it, but living in a house with Lily and Megan, and have like seeing them like literally every waking moment, was just really fun because like they're the people that like I would just love to do life with in general.
Yeah,
And it was just so fun to experience that with them. And obviously, Quinn would come over all the time, and we held AIA there and our, softball discipleship meetings. And so they were always over, and that was a lot of fun just getting to, bring those girls into our space. And so that was really fun. Even just, yeah, going out to eat at some of the best places in Dayton, like our taco and Milano's, and trying to think what else. Just I don't know, just doing life together pretty much. It was just a lot of fun, and the traveling and just the playing together, and we always made it fun.
yeah.
And we always had a good time, like all around with all my teammates.
It's really hard to replicate, isn't it? Like it's such a unique thing to get to do life with your teammates and friends for and play
Yeah.
softball, like travel together. You're staying together in hotels, you're staying together in the fact that you're rooming together. But
Hmm.
then also like there's just so many fun times. But then also like to bring in your faith to that, and I think there's something really unique about and you tell me if you saw this or not, I would imagine you did, but like just there's something unique about like having that same foundation of Christ and like wanting to that each person that you're living with wants to grow in their relationship with
Hmm.
Christ. And it's like almost gives you a whole nother level of like transparency and vulnerability
Oh
and like
yeah.
cheering each other on when we see like
Uh-huh.
ways that we're growing or like wins or ways that we're experiencing courage, like things like that. But then also like being in it with people when there's
Hmm.
injuries and when there's just like fallouts, like things that are hard
Hmm.
in a sport or in school and in relationships, all that. There's just something super unique, about that experience, I think, as a college athlete.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, just yeah, getting to see everybody else grow in their faith and getting to hold each other accountable, especially during games, of just like just reminding each other the little things of that ultimately God is greater,
Hmm.
and just reminding each other of those little things,
Yeah.
and yeah, just getting to lean on each other and just having that core group of um, you know sisters in Christ, basically,
Yeah.
and just getting to do life with them and play with them. And it was just, yeah, it was really special.
Is that something, Liv, that you were able to experience at Auburn? Like on the team, is there like a group of girls that were also growing in their faith in your time there?
Yeah, I would say so. I unfortunately had class and all the other things going on in life, so I wasn't able to actually be a part of it. But I know that they did meet, with like some of the coaches, with a local pastor in the area, just kind of talking through, yeah, just your faith in general and growing in it, but then also like kind of how to grow in it with, you know, your teammates and, within your sport.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately didn't get to be a part of it. But I knew that that was something that was happening on the team and that I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I've been really drawn into the Oklahoma, softball team this year. Obviously, they're
Oh yeah.
incredibly athletic and talented, and
Mhm.
the top of
Yes.
every single aspect of the game, right? Like you either love them or
Yeah.
hate them.
Mhm.
And then to see though, I think there's been a really neat movement on that team spiritually. It's not perfect, right? But just to see
Right.
girls like Grace Lyons, who honestly, from my perspective, live like similar to yourself, not to make a comparison, but the sense of like just has a heart for her teammates and wants them to know Jesus. And
Mhm.
that similar heart is like what I saw in you when you got to UD. So it's been fun. Even though they're at a distance, like we did go to the college softball world series, my sister and I, and that's
Yeah.
definitely a bucket list thing. If you haven't gotten to go, I think it's worthwhile going. But to get to
Yeah.
see them at the top of their game, but also knowing that the Lord's working, and
Mhm.
just that invitation to pray with them after games, and just the boldness and the love they have for
Mhm.
Christ is pretty sweet. So,
Yeah.
but dipping
Yeah.
back into your story, I want to hear like, yeah, would you share more of your mental health journey with us?
Yeah.
Even going from University of Dayton to Auburn, just some of that
Mhm.
journey with mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, now I am in my second year of my master's program in clinical mental health counseling. So I'm basically a therapist at this point. I just have to graduate and,
Oh,
find a job, and I'm there, pass my
yeah.
exam. So it's like I'm pretty much there. Um, but, I never really thought that this is what I would be going into. I kind of thought I was going to go more the athletic training route just because I have a passion for, working with athletes in whatever aspect that looks. And originally going into college, I thought I wanted to do more athletic training, but then as time went on, I realized how important mental health was within, I mean, athletics in general, but especially college athletics. And so that's kind of where my passion grew, and also experiencing some of the things I experienced with it. Now I can say that I have that background of being able to help athletes now because I've been through it and I know what it's like, and I know how you can come out on the other side stronger and better than you were when you were facing whatever it was. Um, so do you want me to go into specifics
Sure.
of
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, okay. So um yeah, I would say my mental health experience, it was, between my, like, end of sophomore year going into my junior year. I just felt a lot of pressure, most of it from myself, to continue to, keep pushing the needle and keep reaching goals that maybe, I set unrealistically for myself. I'll be honest, very hard on myself, very perfectionistic, but most athletes are, and that's what I'm kind of coming to see also. There's kind of like an athlete mindset that we're kind of, that's kind of built and instilled in us as soon as we start sports at a young age, and that just kind of
Mm,
sticks with us. And it's, I mean, the mindset is, there's always a goal to reach. And once you reach that goal, there's more goals to reach. And so it's like, it's almost like nothing is ever enough.
mm,
And you can drive yourself crazy doing that because, you know, you, you're not perfect and nobody's ever going to be perfect. And I think we have a hard time grasping that because we're trying to chase perfection as best as we can, even though we know that we can't in reality, but we're going to try to come close to it. And it's always a grind and trying to balance everything else in our lives. And we just, yeah, I feel like athletes kind of carry a specific and different and unique load that a lot of people don't necessarily carry. And so for myself, I just feel like I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to just, perform almost perfectly, I guess, because, I had all these high expectations for myself, and not seeing that I was reaching them was, just really kind of put me into overdrive and, trying to overwork. And, I actually ended up injuring myself a little bit because I was overworking and overthrowing and just doing everything that I could, working hard like I know how to do, but it was excessive for sure. Um, and that also took a toll, on my mental health as well, because, I'm just in overdrive 24/7 and not giving myself a break. But I started to see, myself get frustrated at just little things, and that frustration and like the nitpickiness of like being overly hard on myself of like if my pitch like my curveball wasn't moving the way I wanted it to, or it was moving too much or not enough, and I would get easily frustrated, and I ended up just really digging myself in a hole and just really lost a lot of confidence in just kind of the basics of, the muscle memory and like everything that I know how to do as a pitcher. Like I feel like I just completely just like lost sight of it and just fell into this hole of, whatever, and I could not figure out how to get myself out. Um and it was really starting to show. Like my teammates started to see a difference in me. I wasn't my usual bubbly, joyful, outwardly joyful self that I normally was. And my coaches also started to notice that. And so I just remember coach pulling me in to our office and, saying like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, you're not yourself." And, again, wanting to not show it. And I thought I was doing a pretty good job of hiding it. Apparently I wasn't. And that's how down bad I was, because, I thought I was doing a pretty good job of maintaining it and showing it and just shoving everything inside and not sharing anything. Um, but apparently I wasn't actually hiding it really that well, because, everybody noticed. And so, yeah, coach talked to me and was like, "Hey, like, I think you need to take a week off from softball." And of course, to me, I'm like, "That's insane. I'm not going to do that." Like, I was very resistant. I didn't act resistant, but inside I'm like, "Nope, there's no way I'm doing that." And she said, "No, I think you can go to lift and you can, come to softball school and like those, other activities, but I don't want you at bullpens or practice. I just want you to take time for yourself, step away from the game for a little bit, like just for a week, and just kind of see where you're at." And I'm still to this day so thankful for that, because I never would have learned what I learned. And I definitely never would have taken the opportunity to actually like unpack what I was feeling. And I feel like my head was so clouded that I really didn't know what was going on. Like she asked me like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like I just know all I see is these terrible results in my game right now, and I'm like, "But I don't know what's causing it." Like I could not tell you what's happening. And I think my head was just so full of just junk and, just negative self-talk and just all these things that I could not decipher what exactly was going on with me. And so I took that week, and actually my pitching coach at the time, who also is now a counselor, which is pretty cool. She told me to journal and to just let it all out. And at first I'm like, really? Like this is kind of stupid. But now I tell all my clients to do that. So, but it's only stupid until you try it, because it
Yeah.
actually helps me a lot. And so I, in that time, just really just wrote out everything that was going through my mind, and I kind of looked at it. I'm like, whoa, okay, that's a lot to unpack, because I kind of came to the conclusion that I was placing so much importance on softball that I kind of forgot the importance, the more importance of God and what He can do in my life. And I felt so distant, not abandoning my faith at all, but I just felt like He just wasn't present. I'm like, "Are you even here? Like, do you see that I am just not doing well? Like, what am I supposed to do?" But at the same time, I didn't necessarily go to Him right away. And it wasn't until I was at the bottom that I was like, "Okay, I cannot do this on my own, and
Mm.
I need you." Like, and it was kind of in that moment, in that week, that I feel like He actually spoke for the first time in a while, but also like that was the first time I let Him too. He was
Mm.
probably trying to speak to me this whole time and try to talk me down and tell me, "Look,
Yeah.
I got this. You just have to give it to me." But I was being stubborn and wouldn't give it to Him. And so now when it's finally at its worst and I have no choice, I finally gave it to him, and he's finally able to take it and run with it and be able to do all these amazing things in my life. And so one of the biggest things that I learned was, um, you know, learning how to give him the glory for everything, no matter the outcome, no matter if we won or lost, no matter if I had the best outing of my life or the worst outing of my life, pointing it all back to him. And again, just truly embodying the audience of one, of nobody else's opinions, nobody else's um approval was
Mhm.
gonna be greater or close to enough than God's for me. And I knew that, at the end of the day, no matter how I did, I knew that, my Heavenly Father is proud of me. And that no matter how I do, he's still happy that I'm playing the game and that I'm giving him the glory for literally everything. Like, if I give up a hit, it's like, I got it's okay. I got the next one. We got the next one. It's fine. Like, we're just gonna keep rolling. And so that was one of the biggest things that like I had learned. Um, and then before I could really start to apply it, COVID hit, and so that was not great either because
Yeah.
it was kind of a time where I felt like, okay, well, I finally worked through all this. Now this is happening, and now softball's like done. Like, I mean, yes, we have next season, but I'm like, what's the point of working towards something when my season's over? There's no conference championship. There's no opportunity to, make it to a regional. Like, there's nothing. And so I was kind of bitter for a little bit, for a couple months. And I wanted nothing to do with softball. I didn't want to practice. I didn't want to throw. I didn't want to do anything because I'm like, what's the point? Because there's nothing to work towards now. But also in that time, I realized that maybe to a degree, I was making softball my idol a little bit, and God had to remove it in order for me to realize that. And so in that time, I actually worked on, you know, my faith and, just really working through, some of the stuff that I was going through before COVID hit and just kind of trying to build upon it. So then when senior year came around, I was actually able to apply it and I was able to go out
Mm,
on the mound and have just this weight off my shoulders, feeling like I didn't have to carry it all and I didn't have to perform, and be perfect because I knew, whose hands it was in and that no matter the outcome, it was going to be okay.
mm,
Um, but also God in that span of time kind of led me to a verse that just kept popping up over and over and over again. And I'm like, okay, this is not a coincidence that this is literally everywhere. Um, but Romans 8:28, and it says, God works all things together for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. And
mm,
the key phrase in there is God works all things together for our good and his glory. And the good and the bad, whatever it is that life throws at us, he's working all of it together for the bigger picture of the plan of our lives, even though we can't see it. But it all has a purpose and none of it happens by accident. And he's using every part of our story and he's knit it together in order to get us to where he's trying to lead us in the end, because he sees the bigger picture, we don't. And so we just have to kind of put, our own ego aside and trust him that he's got it all figured out and that he knows where he's taking us.
mm,
And so those were some of, yeah, the biggest things that I had learned and, ultimately helped me through that time in my life. But then I also ended up going to see our sports psychologist, Becky, who is amazing. And I actually talked to her not probably a year ago now. But she really also helped me, not only in that season of my life and tying, my mental health to my performance, and then, kind of me adding in the God aspect. All of that helped. But then she really helped me when I kind of came to the realization, I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to help athletes in, in their struggles mentally and help them through whatever they're going through, whether it has to do with their sport or whether it's something completely unrelated but is impacting their performance. I
Mm,
want to do that, and I want to serve, you know, and cater to that area of mental health that might not be, that might be overlooked a little bit. And so, she helped me, kind of figure out what program to get into. And so that's kind of how I ended up going on the track that I'm at now of, clinical mental health. It's broad enough to where I can really do anything with it. Um, and so I think that's also helped because I've kind of gotten the whole picture of mental health, but I'm also able to tie it to athletics because of my own experience and just kind of seeing how it all kind of plays together. But then also my recent experience actually working with athletes as their counselor. But yeah, so all of that's kind of worked together, again, like God kind of planned it all out to where I have the experiences that I've had. So now I'm able to help my clients who are going through some of the same things. And I understand on a deeper level because I've been through it also. And I
yeah.
think that brings them some sort of comfort, and they kind of open up a little bit more. Because I mean, if there's anything that I've learned, being an athlete and, I mean, working with athletes, but then also like, talking with teammates and everything, like we all kind of have the mindset of like we don't want to share what we're going through, and we don't want people to see us as quote unquote weak, because if we say how we're actually feeling and how we're struggling, we might not be seen as the tough, mentally, physically tough athletes that like we've been told that we need to be. And so I feel like, breaking that wall with some of the athletes that I've worked with of like saying like, hey, it's okay that you're feeling this way because I did too. And, and I'm not shy about kind of disclosing that to them because I almost immediately see just kind of like, really? And then they're able to kind of open up more and really share what's going on because, I've been there and I've told them that I've been there. And that almost kind of gives them an opening to actually get to what's going on with them. And so that's kind of how I've seen big picture wise it all come together, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for sharing, Liv. I love, you just made me think um this term, God's grace to slow down the pace.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
for me as well, that does not seem very gracious. And for the whole world, right? For every person listening, they experience that on some level in 2020.
Yeah.
But there's something about, coach says, I want you to take a week off from throwing. This is the thing you've worked so hard at, right? To perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
I want you to pull back. And there's a natural resistance there, right? Of like, no, you don't understand. Like this natural resistance of like, I've worked so hard, like it'll set me back, whatever those things are, right? Like
Oh,
this is
yeah.
this is who I am, like whatever those things are in us, where when we're in a space where it's like actually something happens, maybe it's a circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like boom, you got to slow down. Something that sidelines us.
Mm-hmm.
But in my own life, even this past season, I've had to slow down, and I love going hard. I love connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
There's things I love that does not involve slowing down, but God's grace to slow down our pace, like what I heard in your story, is that He gives us the opportunity to, one, to hear from Him, and two, to get a better perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% agree with you. Like everything you just shared, I'm like, that's been my experience in this season and slowing down. I have
Yeah.
resisted at times. I
Mm-hmm.
have complained
Yeah.
to him. I've cried at times, to be honest, with
Yeah.
situations, and at this, it felt misunderstood. A lot of that, right? That
Yeah.
refining He wants to do that's in us when something we love or we're trying to perfect just kind of gets stripped away. And but He is giving me so much perspective, and so to hear you share that, I'm like, I'm with you in it, and there's so much value. Like I love that you said there's something about when we've gone through something,
Mm-hmm.
how a person who goes through something similar, like it really does like help them to feel not alone.
Mhm.
Like the position God's putting you in as you pursue counseling and working with athletes with mental health. I'm like, how cool that you can take something that was probably one of the hardest times of your life,
Yeah.
and but you can use that part of your story and that's in a space with another person to say, I get it. Like,
Mhm.
it just creates that space for them to be honest. And like, once the vulnerability comes and transparency comes, doesn't it, that's what really begins to create that space where we can
Uh-huh.
work and help another person. So I'm excited for you. Like, so much of what
Thank
you shared, I just feel like I resonate with that. And I know
Mhm.
that people listening resonate, especially former athletes, but just women in general, like, know what it feels like to feel pressure, to not want to slow down, to need
Mhm.
perspective, to want purpose, and like, as you kind of in this last year or two at Auburn, like, where have you seen God show up? Like, I think I've seen at a distance that he's brought people around you. There's been a new
Mhm.
church that you've been a part of, opportunities. You talked about he works all things together for good. And we don't get to see all of
Mhm.
that right now, right? But are there ways that
Right.
you've kind of seen that even in this last year a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Um, I would even say just like how God got me to Auburn in the first place.
Hmm.
It's just so wild to me because I mean, you can just go down the line of all the things that he had to make happen in order for me to even be there in the first place. Like my family had to move to Alabama in the first place for me to even consider Auburn. It
Wow.
also had to be COVID in order for me to be able to apply to Auburn without having to take the GRE because they waived it because of COVID.
Hmm.
Um, and, it also had to take a lot of tremendous faith to really only apply to Auburn. I also applied to Dayton because I was considering that at the time. And really, it was more out of familiarity. And, I didn't feel ready to leave yet. But once I got into Auburn and again, I only applied to Auburn and Dayton. I didn't apply anywhere else. And I solely went on faith. I'm like, God, if this is what you want me to do, then I'm going to do it. And, whatever it looks like, I'm going to obey you and I'm going to do it. And so the verse that comes to mind in Isaiah is when, God asks, like, who will I send? And Isaiah pipes up and he goes, me, like, here I am, send me. Like,
Yeah.
that's
He's
kind
like,
of
pick
what I
me,
felt like
pick
in that
me.
moment. Yeah, I'm like, me, like,
Hands
send
up.
me. And so even though I didn't quite know what that was all going to entail, I'm glad that I obeyed what God was telling me to do and, didn't stay where everything seemed comfortable. I kind of left, you know, my home in Dayton, but then found a new home in Auburn and, going where I didn't know anybody at all. Um, it was kind of hard at first. And also the transition from having softball to all this and not having it.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother struggle in itself, I will say. Nobody really prepares you for retirement and what that's like, and having to find your identity outside of your sport because I didn't realize how much my sport was my identity until really that point. And then I'm like, oh, I maybe need to sort out my priorities because if I'm having a hard time like identifying with anything other than my sport, like okay, that's kind of an issue because I should be having my identity solely in Christ. And it really wasn't, and I had it in there before, but I didn't realize how still heavily my identity was in my sport. And like I didn't really realize it until I was talking to some people that I had met, and like I found myself talking about softball and all that, and they would ask me, they're like, so what do you do like for fun outside of softball? And like the first time somebody asked me that, it caught me off guard, and I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, I don't, and then I feel like there's a whole identity crisis in there of I have no idea who I am without my sport. And so then kind of my first steps was, getting planted in a local church, and some family friends of ours who live in Auburn um, told me, hey, you got to go to Auburn Community Church. Like, you check it out. You got to go. And I'm like, all right, sounds great. And I went the first Sunday that I was living in Auburn, and it was one of those where it's like the message was literally exactly what I needed to hear. And I mean, I feel like I just got whacked by the Holy Spirit. And I'm just like, I know that this is where I'm supposed to be and it's all going to work out. But like, I do need to be planted in this church. And this is kind
Mm,
of where I feel at home.
yeah.
And so then I immediately, within the month, was going to worship nights. And then I started getting involved on their serve team, and then like pretty soon I was meeting a bunch of people within the church. And then towards the end of that year, um, I was asked to lead a community group, so basically a discipleship group, like I led
Mhm.
with softball.
Yeah.
But I was leading it for freshman girls at the time. They're now about to be juniors, which is crazy. And so that was really cool, getting to kind of get back to, that leadership aspect, that I did with AIA, and getting to do it, at ACC. So that's also been really cool, just getting back into that and, having, fellowship and I was a part of my own, community group as well, but I was also leading one. And so that was really cool. And, got to meet some amazing people who just have the biggest hearts for Jesus, and it's so cool.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, just kind of getting in a groove with that. I in the back of my mind, softball was always there, and so I thought about, what if I just, went to see if Auburn softball had anything open, just to see. And last year they didn't, and and I prayed a lot about it too. And I'm like, you know what? God, if this isn't what is supposed to happen, that's fine. I'm going to be okay with that. I just want to do what you want me to do. And so if it doesn't work out with them, that's going to be cool. I know you've got something bigger, but if there's a way that you can work it out, obviously would love that. But again, up to you. I'm just going to follow what you're guiding me to do. And so
Yeah.
it wasn't until, so that didn't work out last year. Come a year ago in July, my dad was in Colorado with my sister for a tournament, and he runs into Auburn's coach, who, since I have played, we have never seen Auburn at any of our tournaments. No matter like what coach was there at the time, we have never seen them ever. And this was the
Wow.
first time that they show up. And my dad calls me. He's like, "You're never gonna guess like who came, like who I finally found like at the tournament, like at this tournament." I'm like, "Who?" And he's like, "Auburn." And I'm like, "Are you for real? Like we've been trying to find them for forever." And then he's like, "Okay, but that's not all. I was talking to the coach, and kind of was telling him about you." And he's like, "Does she want to be my grad assistant?" And I'm like, "Are you for
What?
real?" I'm like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, no, he's gonna call you like in a couple days." So then on the 4th of July, coach calls me, and he's like, "Hey, so, you know, I talked to your dad, would you have any interest in being one of my grad assistants?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so that's how
Mhm.
that happened. But, kind of going back to where that started was, you know, I prayed about it. And even though it seemed like it wasn't working out, it
Yeah.
just wasn't God's timing yet. But yet, like, he still honored my faith and my prayers. It just wasn't in the timing that I thought it should have been in. Because
Mm,
ideally, I'm like, this would be perfect timing for this. But it wasn't his timing yet. And actually, this actually ended up working out pretty wonderfully. It was a very busy, busy season, but like, with my internships and, traveling and practices and, just basically going from 0 to 100 back into college softball again.
yeah.
Um, it was crazy, but it was so much fun.
Mm,
But yeah, just seeing that again, just, seeing how God will still honor our prayers and, honor our faith and the little seeds that we plant along the way. Like he still honors them. It just might not be in the way that we want it to be, and it may not come up the way that we envision it, and it
yeah.
also might not be in the timing that we want it to be in. But he still honors it, and he's
Yeah.
gonna make it happen. It just might not be what we expect, but it's always going to be better than we expect.
Yes. Liv, oh my goodness. It brings me so much joy. I have not heard that story. And so that's the first time I've heard that story of yours.
Yeah.
And it's just like God writes a better story than we could write for
Mhm.
ourselves oftentimes, you know?
Absolutely.
And so when we don't see what we've been praying for, it's a good reminder like God is genuinely writing a better story. He is.
Mhm.
He wants to wow
Mhm.
us, and it looks different for everyone. But I literally, it's the wow factor as I hear the story you just shared, and genuinely, God works all things together for
Mhm.
good. Like what you shared earlier is so true. And so, anyway, friend, you know I love you. Like I am so excited for what God's doing in your life. Like thanks for letting us into both like the lows, the challenges, the mental
Mhm.
health
Yeah.
journey, as well as the God stories of the high. And even the God stories come in the lows as well, don't they? Like,
Mhm.
just thanks for letting us into it. And
Yeah.
I just love you. It's fun. I want you to share this. One really cool thing that was a God story. Like you wouldn't have expected that your girls from Dayton would end up at Auburn. Like
No,
to see how God,
that was a whole 'nother thing
yeah,
too.
can you just 30 seconds, like what
Yes.
happened? I know for
Oh,
Quinn, that was huge to get to play on Auburn's field.
Had a showstopper earlier in the game and another diving grab to keep this game
Give
within
us the
reach.
down
inside
here.
scoop of what really happened. Just like who was there. Um,
Oh,
you
it
know,
was
just
awesome.
quick
Yeah.
inside scoop. What, and I heard there was a big catch, like just some really cool
Oh,
things. Yeah, just
that
bring us
was
in
hard.
that moment, would you?
Yes, yeah. So, um, shout out to Briley, Megan, and Lily. They all flew into Auburn to come stay with me, but then also to surprise Quinn. So then we could all be together, and it had been a couple years actually since we'd all been, together. And so getting to have them there was super special. But yeah, we were playing Dayton, and Quinn was in right field, and she had this amazing catch, and like I was so excited, but I'm like I'm on the other side. I can't just like show how excited I am right now, but I was so pumped for Quinn. That was such an amazing catch she had. And yeah, it was just really special just having them all there at the same time again, and getting to see coach again, and getting to see my other teammates and catching up with them. And it was so cool. It was so awesome.
Yeah, it's cool to see things come a little full circle in some ways, you know.
Yeah.
So, I almost said Quinn and then Lily. Liv, just thanks for being you. For me, like genuinely, it's so special to get to pour into your life in college, and so it's fun to see, even though it's not perfect, right? My life as well, but it's fun to see you come back to your roots, and that God's bringing people around you there in Auburn, just to keep pursuing Him. And I'm really stoked about what He has for you as you pursue counseling. Like, yeah, He's going to bring people into your life that you're going to get to pour into in that way. So super excited. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Priceless Backstories podcast. Thanks for being with us. Have a great day.
Thanks, Amy.